Okay, now I'm going to a PowerPoint. Here we go. It's super simple, folks. Okay, welcome everybody. It's August 8th. This is our Monica Astrology Zoom meetup for August. Spencer and I are your hosts. Today we have a special presentation with Kevin DeCapite, who is going to be showcasing his cloud astrology program, Luna Astrology. First off, are there some coming astrological events? So we had a new moon this morning, 16 Leo, August 10th, Tuesday. Mercury goes void of course for just over 20 hours. It enters Virgo on the 11th. Whoops, stop that. August 15th, which is next Sunday, is going to be a real busy day. NCGRLA has their monthly meetup with Jeff Henshaw, is going to be talking about tarot and astrology. Also, the moon and Venus will be going void of course in the evening, but they're both short, with the moon like 7 minutes, and it enters Sagittarius, and then Venus will enter Libra. So it's going to be that time of the year when both Venus and Mercury are in their home signs. The 16th, the moon's going to go out of bounds south. August 19th, Uranus stations retrograde, at which point there's going to be 5 retrograde planets, the 5 outers: Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Yes?
Can you repeat the retrogrades again? When?
August 19th.
Okay. And then 5 are going to be...
Oh, wait a minute. You know what I didn't do? Silly me. Excusez-moi. Excusez-moi.
You didn't.
I forgot to share screen. Duh. Let's try again. Okay. Can you see this now?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hey, there we go. How much? See, isn't that nicer?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well. Yeah. Okay. Too many things to remember at once. Okay. Here we go. Got it in my head. So you can see the dates. I will send this information out to the meetup group and post it on our Facebook page as well. And this is being recorded, and the recording will be available for viewing. Kevin is nice enough to offer a 20% off coupon. Anybody who wants to partake of his cloud astrology software, good for 48 hours, Kevin?
3 days, basically, till Wednesday at midnight.
Okay. All right. So I sent the link out in an email just a little bit earlier today to everybody in the meetup group. I'll be posting it on the Facebook page. If you didn't get it, you can email me and I will send it to you. Let's see. Okay, so here we see August 19th, Uranus stations retrograde. So at that point, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, the 5 outer planets, will all be retrograde. What that means basically is that the Earth is between the sun and those 5 planets. Those 5 planets are closer to us, or we're closer to them. Then on August 20th, the moon returns in bounds. August 27th, or 22nd, I'm sorry. August 22nd, we have full moon, 29 Aquarius full moon. And then the sun and the moon both go void of course. But then the moon will enter Pisces and the sun will enter Virgo later that day. So they're short ones. August 29th, Mercury goes void of course, and then they enter Libra. August 30th, the moon goes out of bounds north. September 3rd, my birthday, it returns in bounds. Happy birthday to me. September 6th, we have the Virgo new moon at 14 Virgo. And then on September 12th, it's the Santa Monica Astrology Zoom meetup. And we'll be talking about Chiron, more than the wounded healer. So If you think that Chiron is only about being the wounded healer and where you've been wounded or healed, or help others to heal, or you wound people, you're wrong. Join us and we'll talk about what else Chiron is all about. Okay, I'm going to, oh heck, I'll finish the slideshow now, and that way we won't have to deal with it later. So as I mentioned, September 12th, we're going to be talking about Chiron. October, we're going to be meeting on the third Sunday, which is the 17th, which is a little off track. Personal reasons, as it happens, Sunday, October 10th is 34th wedding anniversary. So sorry, folks, we're celebrating. So you get it a week. We'll be talking about chart patterns, bowls, kites, buckets, bundles, flash, those kind of things. But what do you see when you look at a chart with the 10 planets displayed? So this is different than aspect patterns like grand trines or yodes. November 14th, back to second Sunday. Plan is I'm going to be doing an introduction to prenatal astrology and why it's important. December 12th, we're going to do our look ahead to 2022. And this time it's going to be a big one because the US has 3 Pluto returns in 22. So that could be interesting, especially since it's also a midterm election. Anybody got questions at this point for me? For Spencer, for anybody? I'm going to go, where are you? Back to Zoom. Here we go. No, that's not it. Where am I at? Here we go. Okay, Zoom. Here we go. That's what I'm looking. Stop sharing. Here we are. Okay, everybody. Hey, I'm back. Here we go. Okay, anybody got any questions or anything? Any announcements of any sort? Anything? Any other upcoming astrological events that you're aware of to mention to folks? We like to promote everybody. Going once, going twice. Okay. You're pretty much, most people are muted, but if you, as I'm going to turn things over to Kevin, and as he does his presentation, if you have questions, feel free to unmute and jump in and ask the question so that, you know, it's fresh in everybody's mind in terms of what Kevin is showcasing and what your question is.
I have a question.
Okay, Bill.
Yeah, Kevin, we had your you I guess it was an email, a URL for your program, and there was I think it was like a $5 fee for a I don't know if it was just one day or for the 3 weeks or whatever it was, subscription. And so I paid for that, and I just put in today's chart. So I can go back and work with the program?
Absolutely.
For 48 hours or something?
Oh, no. So I'll explain more about the discount, but I'd go ahead and do that now. So if you sign up within the next 3 days, you'll receive the 20% discount for your first 12 months of service. So if you signed up for the monthly plan, which is the $5 per month, then you'll have access to the software for at least the full month. And if you renew, which is automatic unless you cancel, then you'll continue to receive full access to the program for the duration. And again, the first 12 months of service, you'll pay the discounted rate, which I think would be $4, right, off of the 20% off of there. But there's also a yearly option too, so you could,
okay,
just to tell people. I'll go into that a little bit more in the presentation. But yeah, no, you're good to go there for sure. So thank you for doing that before you even saw it.
Well, I thought we might be able to use it during your talk today.
Oh, cool. Yeah, you could follow along. That's a great idea.
Okay, everybody, I'm gonna make Kevin the host. Hopefully, I'll still be able to see people as they join the want to join, and I'll be able to let them in. Otherwise, well, okay. Changing host to host. Here you go, Kevin.
Okay.
The ball is in your court.
All right. It says, let me get my screen sharing going here. Oops. There we go. That's the one I want. All right. So can everyone see my screen? Did I do that correctly? Just have a little intro slide here. All right. Well, thanks, Jim and Spencer, for bringing me on here. Excited to talk with everyone today about this creation here, Luna Astrology, which can be found online at lunaastrology.com. As Jim was saying, it's cloud astrology software, which I'll explain all of what I mean by that as we go along here. Just to tell you a little bit about myself. Again, my name is Kevin DeCapity, and I consider myself a student of astrology, really. I do some consultations here and there, but primarily I consider myself more of a student than a practitioner, let's say. But I've been studying for about 10 years. I've been in the technology world writing cloud software, web software, whatever you want to call it, for about 20 plus years now. So that's been kind of my day job. And what's happened is, since I've gotten into astrology over the last, again, decade or so, I found personally that some of the astrology tools that exist weren't quite up to some of the standards that I wanted to see in terms of ease of use and just the modern techniques. I'm sorry, I don't mean modern astrological techniques, but modern software-based techniques that could be employed. And so I've had this vision for quite a while to create astrology software, but it's a pretty large undertaking, because one has to really know a lot about astrology and one has to know a lot about programming. And so those are all skills that I've just been developing over the years. And so long story short, basically, I was able to finally bring this together pretty much at the end of 2017 is when the idea really planted itself. I would say the seed really showed up in a real way. And then all throughout 2018, I was just furiously building and programming what I'm going to show you today, and basically launched in 2019. And so the last couple of years have been sort of slow, steady growth. My plans are to really go as big as I can with it. I think that cloud-based software is really kind of the future. And I've seen that in the business sector, where I've been, professionally for a number of years working in business. Everything's moving to the cloud, and I think astrology software needs to do the same thing. And so that's been my focus. That's been my motivation, as well as, again, my love for astrology and the significance that it's had in my life personally. And I'm sure all of you can attest to that too. So to be able to bring these two things together in this way really has been kind of a magical experience for me. And it's my passion, it's my heart, and I feel privileged to be able to do this. So I'm happy to share this with you folks today. It's a little bit about me. So Luna Astrology, again, it's cloud astrology software. The simple way to say this is that it just runs in your browser. So it's essentially a web-based application. We use the word cloud nowadays instead of web. Somehow the nomenclature changed, but it's essentially just a web-based piece of software that runs as a service, meaning you pay a very low subscription fee. I was speaking to that gentleman just a few minutes ago about the fee. And the good thing is that it will run on any device that has a browser. So this is your Mac computer. This is your Windows computer. If you have a Chromebook, I don't know if any of you folks know what those are. That's kind of a thing that's come out in the last couple of years, sort of a laptop device that Google makes. It's going to run, Luna will run on your iPhone, your Android phone, your tablets. Basically, if you have a device that can connect to the internet and surf the web, then you can use Luna and get all the power of the astrology software that Luna has right there. I use what I call a one price every device pricing model, which means you just pay the subscription fee. Again, it's monthly or yearly, and then you can log in. You'll get a secure login when you do that, and you're able to log in on all of your devices. So you don't have to pay per device. So if you have 100 devices, go for it. You just pay the one fee and you can log in under your account, and all of your data is going to be there no matter what. As long as you log in using your email address, all of your charts will follow you. They're all stored securely in the cloud. I use, best practices for security and privacy. I take all of that very, very seriously, especially with something as sensitive as chart information. I consider it very, very sensitive information. And so it's encrypted end to end and all of that sort of thing. Also, because it's in the cloud, you don't have to maintain anything on your end. So there's no updates that are going to get pushed down to your device. If you buy a new computer or if you get a new phone, you don't have to go hunting for Luna and reinstall it. Again, you'll just open up a web browser, you'll log in, and everything will be just as you left it. So the next thing would be to talk a little bit about the discount that Jim mentioned. And so I put this slide together this morning, and I realized now I'm telling you can save 20%, but off of what, Kevin, would probably be everyone's question. So I forgot to put the base price on there. So I can just tell you certainly the monthly fee is $5 a month and the yearly fee is $36 a year. So for the next 3 days, you can use the link that Jim has sent out to everyone. You can also scan this QR code with your phone if you know how to do that. But either way, the QR code or the link from Jim will take you to the sign up page on Luna's website, where you can select which plan you want. Whether or not you want the yearly or the monthly, totally up to you. Either way, you'll get the 20% off for 12 months. And then after that, you'll revert to the standard fee. The advantage of going yearly, of course, is that you pay up front for the year and you get an even bigger discount. But if you do the monthly, then you can cancel at any time. So it's up to you how you want to do that. I try to make the pricing flexible and affordable as much as possible, because everyone has different needs. And I know that some of you probably have astrology software already, like SolarFire or Astro Gold. And so I want you to be able to use Luna as well as those programs. And I don't want you to feel like you have to choose between one or the other. So I try to keep the pricing affordable, at least, for the time being here while we can. You can follow Luna on, I've got several social channels here. I've got a YouTube channel where I'm putting videos up regularly. There's about a dozen right now, and there's more coming that will give you instruction on how to use the program. So that's on YouTube. And then there's Facebook and Instagram profiles as well, where I post things like various tips and tricks or feature updates. And then, of course, there's also the website itself, which will have all the latest features showcased on it. And why don't I actually pull that up right now? It probably would be wise. So if you go to lunaastrology.com, here you go. So this is what the homepage looks like. And I believe it's a little slower now because we're doing the screen sharing at the same time here. Yeah, so the images are taking a little while to download. But just so you can see, here's what the website looks like. There we go. You see a screenshot of what the application looks like. And I'm going to walk through all this. And there you go. So this will just give you an idea of what to expect when you go to the website. There's a product tour here. So if there's anything that you want to go back to after this presentation today, you can go to the website, and I've got screenshots that you can look at and so on. Okay. So why don't we, let me just reiterate something that Jim mentioned earlier, which was questions. Yeah, I've got an outline to make sure I don't miss important points, but it's not rigid at all. So if folks have any questions, please feel free to just ask away. So I can stop now as well if anyone has any immediate questions before I get into it. And if not, not a problem. And Jim, just so you know, I did admit some people. So it looks like because I'm the host, I'll have to admit people along the way, which is totally fine, but just letting you know. I think you're
I have one question, just quickly that flashed in my mind. You'll probably already have it, but how do we access files in software we already have? Will you go over that?
Yeah, I will. In fact, let's talk about that now briefly. So I do offer what I'm calling a chart import service right now, so Luna can import really any chart data that you have. The challenge is getting the data out of your current program. And so not all programs make that easy or even possible. However, it is possible to do that in SolarFire. It's possible to do it from AstroDienst. And it's possible to do it from, well, I know IO, the Time Cycles IO has gone away now, but they have an export. I haven't been able to figure out how to do it out of Astro Gold, however. I'm sure there's a way to do it, but that's something that unfortunately we have to go directly to those manufacturers and developers and ask them, hey, how do I get my data out of your software? If we can get it out of their software, then absolutely I can get it into Luna for you. That's not a problem. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit. AstroSeek, someone just asked. That's a good question. Again, I would say the same thing. If they offer an export service, then yes, we can get it into Luna. But we'd have to find out if they do that first or not. There's another question here. Astrocartography. No, I don't have astrocartography yet. That's on the roadmap. Anya, so thank you for asking that. All right, so let's go to the software here. So when you log in, you're going to get by default a chart of the current moment, which is essentially what this is. Well, this one is set for 12 noon, essentially when this meetup began. And if you've used other astrology software before, you're probably pretty familiar with the basic layout. You know, you've got your chart data that you're looking at here, the date and the location and time zone, all that kind of stuff. It's telling me this is the tropical zodiac chart, Placidus house system, and so on. But one of the things that I like to think I'm doing differently in Luna that you don't see with other web services like AstroSeek, I'm glad you brought that up, is that Luna lets you animate charts, which I'm going to do right now for you. So just like you can in SolarFire or Astro Gold, you can select your time intervals here. And again, this is just a transit chart. You know, I can do 5 weeks, and we can just go ahead and navigate around, browse around, just like we're used to doing in other astrology programs. So one of my goals in this was always to try to recreate that desktop experience, but in the browser, in the web, so we can have the best of both worlds. A lot of times with websites you go to, you've got ads everywhere, which I'm dead against. I'm not going to have ads. You're not going to have to worry about that. I'm not going to run ads in Luna. So I want a very clean interface that allows you to focus just on the study and the practice of astrology. That's what was important to me. So, and then again, this animation feature, which I think is really important. You know, you can punch in a specific date as well, of course. So we can just do that. I should mention, this is a good time to say that when you're doing a location search, I'm using Google Maps under the hood. So what that means is anything that you would put in Google Maps to search, you can search for in Luna. So you can be kind of generic like I just was and do New York. You could do something like a point of interest even. So I like to, for fun, do Statue of Liberty, you know, and then that'll come up. Actually, that doesn't look quite right. That took me to somewhere in Wisconsin. But hey, that's Google Maps for you. But the point is that you can do a specific address if you want. If you know the specific address, here's a location, and there you go. So if you're doing a chart for someone and you actually know the hospital they were born in, or if they were born at home or something like that, you could get that specific if you like. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what some of these buttons mean and the chart itself here. I want to show that obviously you've got you know the basic chart layout, but the chart itself is actually interactive. I'm going to update to now. So if I can hover over the moon and you can see it dims a little bit. And when I click on it, I get a lot of information about the moon. It's telling me that it's at 19 Leo, which is a fixed fire sign. It's in the 10th house. It's direct. Of course, the moon will always be direct, but I also get my ecliptic coordinates, equatorial coordinates, which is not something that astrologers use a lot, although declination tends to be used quite a bit by some astrologers. But for the sake of completeness, I decided to also include the right ascension information. Primarily, it's the longitude from ecliptic and the declination from equatorial that most astrologers are interested in. But here you can see all of it. And then below, it shows you all the aspects that the moon is making. Obviously, the conjunction to the moon, we had our new moon today, conjunction to Mercury, and it gives you kind of the ideal angle for a conjunction, of course, 0 degrees. It's telling us the actual distance. It's a the distance between the sun and moon is 2 degrees, 55 minutes. That, of course, is the orb. Maybe a little easier to see what's happening here with moon square Uranus. A 90-degree square is the ideal, the perfect square. This one happens to be 94 degrees, and it's separating with an orb of 4 degrees, 38 minutes. So just to giving you some information there, and I'll show you there's several different ways of looking at the aspects. This is just one of them, but we'll get into that a little bit more later. And of course, it's the same for all the other chart points. You click on the node and it's going to show you the aspects the node is making and all that information. I call this a data card. It's just a little piece of information that shows up. Other things are interactive here too. For instance, I could click on this square icon and there's the aspect itself between moon square Uranus. So we can inspect that a little bit more too. So yes, I see a question about setting orbs in house systems. I will get into that. I can jump into that right now, actually, because you can adjust your orbs in house system. So the main navigation bar here that lets you navigate, we're on the transits page right now. On the right-hand side, you're going to see your name. And when you click on that, you can go to your settings. And here's where you can change all of the various settings. So I've got, in this case, because I'm located in Portland, of course, that's my home location. You can change that. I've got, this is kind of fun, a couple different color themes. So dark mode is really popular these days. So you can go back and forth in Luna. Good for nighttime if you're doing a lot of stuff. If you're nocturnal, you might have the monitor real dim, and sometimes dark mode's kind of nice. So that's fun. Here's the house system. We've got 8 different house systems to choose from. You can see them here. It's all the main ones. I will be adding more as time goes on, no doubt. Let's jump over to aspects. There's some other calculation settings here. We'll get into those as we approach those features, but let's look at aspects since I was asked about the orbs. So here's where we can indicate 2 things on this screen. One is, what aspects do I want Luna to calculate for me? As you can see here, conjunction is turned on. That's what the checkbox means. Sextile, square, I have all the main ones. But there's some minor aspects too. You've got decile, novile, septile. It's giving you the angle. And then you can set the orbs here. Forgive that little icon. That's my password manager. It's a browser extension I have going that's doing that. Let me look at this one. So like the sextile, I have an applying orb of 4.5 and a separating orb of 3.5. And you can customize all of that yourself. I don't know if anyone works with declinations much, but I've got declinations here too. And you may have noticed it on the other page, other screen rather, that declinations show up right alongside aspects. I sort of treat, as much as possible, I'm trying to treat declinations as first-class citizens, if you will, instead of making people hunt around for them. I'm elevating them essentially to the same level of aspect. So when you're looking, because we're really looking at the relationship between the planet and another planet, or in this case, the moon, a luminary, and another planet. And that relationship can be in longitude, which is what the aspects are, or it could be in declination, and that can also be very significant. So the out of bounds statement question I just saw, yes. So let me show you that, because there's a couple different ways that Luna will indicate when a planet is out of bounds. So you see here, you've got the RX for retrograde planets. And I think I might be changing that, by the way, so that all the numbers will be red when it's retrograde. So right now it's just a little red RX, but there's an update coming where the numbers will be red completely to indicate retrograde, just to make it a little more obvious. But you can also see, and maybe you can't, I don't know if it's too small, there's little tick marks that show where the planet actually is in the zodiac. None of these tick marks are red, which means we don't have anything out of bounds. But Jim, can you tell me when the moon is going to be out of bounds next? Let's take a look. No. August 17th. Very good. Thank you. So go there. And sure enough, that tick mark is now red, which indicates it's out of bounds. And I think when you're looking at this on your own computer or your own device, you're going to see that a lot better. But I can also click on it, and it's indicated right there, moon OOB. And now you may not have noticed before, but the declination value was kind of in gray text before. Now it's in red text, which is telling you that this declination value is out of bounds. The velocity ones are red when it's moving in a negative direction. But the declination value is red, indicating it's now out of bounds. There'll be other ways of seeing that too, but we'll kind of continue from here. So that's a little bit about the overall layout of the chart, and it's a little bit about the settings. Let's take a look at this toolbar here, because there's a lot of stuff packed into this that I think is going to be worth sort of exploring. Let me just take a look at my my notes. Yeah. So this next toolbar, I call it infographic. And remember, we're still looking at the same chart. So this is relating. In fact, it tells me right here, August 17th. That was a chart I just cast. So this is the infographic, I'm calling it, for that chart. This is kind of an attempt to create a bird's eye view of what the chart is doing without looking specifically at a chart. So I think this is really good as sort of a teaching tool, but also it can be useful even for people who are practicing astrology, because again, you can look at the data in slightly different ways. One of the things that I noticed, to digress a little bit from this screen, just to share my experience in creating astrology software, I realized how much the process really is just about finding new ways to look at the data. You know, as astrologers, in many respects, we're kind of, if you forgive me, we're sort of data nerds. You know, we're always looking at what's this piece of data saying, what's that piece of data saying, and well, I want to know this, I want to know that. And so I think a lot of what is going to be going into Luna in the future, well, a lot of what's already gone into it, but then going forward is going to be just finding new creative ways to represent the data, because there's so much of it out there. There's so many different ways to represent the data. And this is what can lead to new techniques and new discoveries in the field, really. So we've got, going back to the infographic, the big three, as we know them to be called, you know, the sun, the moon, the ascendant. Really good if you don't know how to read a chart yet. And you're like, well, what's the ascendant? Well, here you go. And we can tell you, we can spell it out for you. Luna will calculate the lunar phase of the chart. So this is this particular chart we pulled up for the 17th has us in the first quarter square, which is sometimes called the crisis of action phase. So to give you that information. Then down here, we've got a couple graphs, which I just call zodiac attributes. This is giving you the distribution of qualities on the left here, and then elements on the right. So you can hover over and say, okay, look, there's this portion of the chart has mutable planets. And this, in this case, that number is 37%, in case anyone can read that or not. This portion has fixity in it. Okay, so 50% of the chart points that we've enabled are in fixed positions. So we could say maybe it's a fairly fixed chart. As opposed to the cardinality here, we've got two, Venus and Pluto are in cardinal signs. And then on the right is the same concept, but we're dealing with elements now: air and water, fire, and earth, of course. And these little pop-ups that you see that are showing the planets are going to be based on your settings. So if you remember that setting screen, and I'll pull it up again briefly here, you can turn on and off a variety of chart points. I have just the primary ones turned on right now, and we'll look at these in a little bit more detail later, but just to show you, there's a lot of different chart points you can turn on, and that'll factor into what's calculated here. Then we have this idea. This is something I put together that I'm calling an aspect distribution. And it's basically a graph that it attempts to show what I just showed you before with the elemental balance, but from an aspect standpoint. Well, how many conjunctions are in the chart, and how many significant conjunctions are in the chart? How many sextiles, and how significant are the sextiles in the chart, and so forth. And so the way you read this is along the bottom here, this x-axis, you've got 0 through 180, which would account for every possible aspect in the chart. Because of course, once you get to the opposition at 180, you start going back the other direction to to another inconjunct, but on the other side, and so on. So this is showing a spread of all the different possible aspects. And then there's a bubble that represents what I'm calling the impact of the aspect, or the significance of the aspect. So you've got, in this case, the conjunction. And I don't know if you can read that little pop-up there that I just moused over. It has an impact score of 8. So the circle is, so big because it includes 4 aspects. So there's 4 conjunctions in this chart. However, some of them include the sun, the midheaven, the IC, and the descendant. So because the sun and the angles are involved, that's adding to the score a little bit. So it's not just saying 4 conjunctions, 4 points, it's saying 4 conjunctions, 8 points, because there's some other significant chart points involved in these aspects that we want to look at. And here's a good example from the sextile, has 4. So there's 4 sextiles. However, the impact score is 6 as opposed to 8, because it's the moon and the ascendant, which elevate it from just being 4, but it's also not including as many angles. So it's considered a little bit less of an impact. This is something that would be useful probably to do in sort of a side-by-side fashion. I can't show that to you right now, I don't think, because if I'm sharing only one screen, but something that's good to know is when you're on your computer, you can open up multiple windows and put them side by side. So you can do that with Luna too. You could have a chart, Luna chart on the left, and then you could have this grid on the right and have your windows side by side, which is something you can't really do in other programs. So that's just something to bear in mind as part of the flexibility here that's built in. Another question came in about fixed stars and Arabic parts. So fixed stars, not yet. Again, that is something on the roadmap. Arabic parts, we've got 2 at the moment. So the lot or part of fortune and of spirit are the 2. And again, there are more will be forthcoming. And we'll show that a little bit. This is more about aspects. I'll kind of skim through this for now. I don't want to, well, I could just say very easily what it is. It's basically saying that this is a list of major aspects to the sun, major aspects to the moon, and then hard aspects to the angles, which are often things that I know a lot of astrologers will look at. Okay. So now some folks were asking about declinations. So here's another sort of interesting creation, which is something I call a declination map. So the declination map takes, basically, this is a map of just the declination values. So whereas the aspects are the longitude values, this is now the declination values. That's what you see here on the left side here, along the y-axis. Along the x-axis is the basically the zodiac. So you do get the longitude as well. And these are all the different planets. So here I just hovered over the descendant. Here I hovered over Uranus. But it lets you see the spread, because one of the things about declinations is that you can't see them on charts. The chart, the typical astrology chart being a circle, it shows the longitude values, the zodiac degrees, but it doesn't show the declination values. So this was a way of saying, I want to see the spread of declination values. This is kind of an interesting spread because it's almost a perfect little sine wave here. But what you can do with this, besides just hover over and see where everything is, which is handy, of course, but I can take a look at Uranus, click that, and you notice it pops up here telling me it's at 15 degrees north. And then click on the midheaven. And I did that because they look to me, when I eyeball it, they look like they're parallel. And so when I click on it, I can certainly see that Uranus and the midheaven are in fact parallel, because with 15.87, 15.83, I mean, they're almost exactly parallel, very, very tight. And this map lets you see that at a glance. You can look for a contraparallel. Let's click on Uranus again. And somewhere near 15, minus 15. And naturally, here you go. There, well, what we have the ascendant is contraparallel to the ascendant. A little bit off, not exact, but still pretty close, depending on what you want to use for your orb settings. The red lines are the out of bounds values. So here you see moon is out of bounds, of course. That's why we casted this chart. So you can see that it's sitting below the red line. So this is something that could be really interesting to play with if you're using declinations a lot in your practice. It's just sort of a new creative way, I think, to browse through them. I've got a couple questions, so let me maybe take a look at what these are here. So I answered the Arabic parts, asteroids list. So we've got some, which I'll show you in a minute here. Zodiacal releasing, no, that's not available yet. Some of the Hellenistic techniques are still being planned out. My background is more in modern and psychological astrology, so I actually have a lot to learn on the Hellenistic side before I'd be able to implement them. But I do think that probably come 2022, next year, they will find a way on my roadmap at that point as I continue my studies. Change the design to European style. Okay. So yeah, right now, in terms of the visuals of the chart, let's take a look at the chart again. This is the design of the chart. Someone was asking if we could do like a European style. And I think that eventually I will implement a few other design options, but for right now, this is the main design option. Just so you're aware of that. So we'll continue down here. The last bit on this page is a hemisphere emphasis diagram, similar to what you saw before with the elements and qualities, except now we're separating into southern hemisphere, northern hemisphere, eastern, western, and then just quadrants over here. So again, just different ways of looking at the data. And one of the things that I'll reiterate again is that even though we're looking at this on a desktop screen, it's going to work just fine on your phone. There's no reduction of features on the phone version. So everything that you can do on your desktop, you can do on your phone or your tablet or whatever other device that you want to use. Same goes with Windows or Mac. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these other data sheets here. Well, does anyone have any other questions? I know I just kind of answered a few that showed up in the chat, but now's not a bad time to pause and ask for more questions. Okay, great. So again, we're looking at that same chart. No, I don't mind sharing my chart. Anya asked if I'd share my chart. No, that's fine. I certainly could do that. Maybe I'll do that towards the end if you guys don't mind. That will be fine. So this is an aspect data sheet that lists out all the aspects that Luna calculated for the given chart. It's basically just, it sort of takes the place of an aspectarian. If you're familiar with the old aspect grid, that little triangle thing, it gives you a little bit more information than the aspectarian. And what's nice about it is that it's interactive. So for instance, if I wanted to look at all aspects that Mars is making, I can go in the little search box and just type in Mars, and it's going to filter out the list for me. And now I see that Mars is making a square to the nodal axis. Of course, we can see that. I can also sort the aspects. So if I want to sort, here's all my conjunctions on top, sorted basically by angle. I can do a reverse sort by clicking again. So I get the declinations on top this time, opposition, which would be a wide aspect, and then inconjunct, trine, so on. Something that's kind of interesting is, I could do search for square, and then I could sort by orb. And here I find the tightest square in the chart is going to be the first one. And that's Sun square Uranus with a 1 degree 44 minute orb. So if you want to hone in on certain types of aspects, you can sort of play with this a little bit, and again, it's searchable, it's sortable, and you're going to see this elsewhere. This is probably a good time to go into the chart points because some folks were asking about asteroids and Arabic parts, so I can go over that stuff now. So these are all the chart points calculated for the chart. And this works similarly to the aspect data sheet we were just looking at. I can filter. I could say Leo and say, look, we've got 3 planets in Leo here. Okay, great. Maybe I want to do air. Okay, let's see what air's in the chart. So here I've got the 3 chart points in air signs. It's giving me the planet itself. The symbol is what I mean, and then the name. So again, this is kind of useful for learning because a lot of times folks maybe don't know exactly what all the symbols mean. So here's a way of kind of reiterating that. I do categorize them here for you. So Jupiter among the social planets, this is in the 4th house, and you can see all the basic data here. But one of the things I want to show you next is that the other chart points that I don't have turned on are also here below. They're not calculated because I don't have them turned on, but I could very easily do that. So let's go ahead and we could turn on the 2 parts that we do have. And then as far as asteroids, these are the ones at the moment. We've got Chiron and Pholus as well, more centaurs, I suppose. And then the 4 main ones, Ceres and Pallas and so on. We could turn on the ones that I want. Jim was mentioning Black Moon before, Black Moon Lilith, which is in 3 varieties here. It gets pretty technical in terms of why there would be 3 varieties of Black Moon Lilith. That's probably its own discussion. And then there's other forms of Lilith in general, as Jim knows. But suffice it to say that in Luna, the one that you're looking at is the Black Moon Lilith involved with which is really the lunar apsides. And so the lunar apsides, you have the orbit of the moon around the Earth. It's not really an ellipse. But if you picture an ellipse, the oblong circle, it's very roughly speaking kind of like that. And what that means is because it's an oblong orbit, you have a point at which the moon is closest to the Earth and a point at which the moon is farthest from the Earth. And so that's basically what Black Moon Lilith is. It's the point at which the moon is furthest from the Earth. And then the opposite, which is Priapus, is when it's closest to the Earth. The reason that there's 3 calculation options is because what I was saying before, the moon does not make a regular orbit at all around Earth. It's highly, highly irregular. So you've got a mean calculation which says, let's throw away the irregularities and just pretend that it's making a nice smooth circle, or ellipse rather. That's the mean calculation. And then the natural and the osculating as well get a little bit more hairy in terms of how to explain those simply. The natural is essentially trying to follow the natural orbit as much as possible. And then the osculating has to do with when it's actually touching various endpoints. But you can turn those on. I think the mean is what most folks use. Jim, you would know better than me. I believe you use this chart point more often than I do, but let's go ahead and turn those on. I'll just do update preferences and go back to the chart. And you can see we got more stuff on here now. And again, these chart points are all interactive. So not a problem to just click on a lot of spirit here and I can see the aspects it's making. There is a calculation option for, I'm losing my windows here. Let me go to settings. For the lots where you can respect the sect of the chart, whether it's a day chart or night chart. Airs, yes, that's definitely on my roadmap. I've got, I'll tell you right now, the ones that I'm going to be adding definitely this year, it looks like. Eris is one of them, and some other minor bodies. Cheriklo or Cheriklo, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Hamea, Hygeia, Ixion, Make, Nessus, Orcus, Sedna, Varuna, and Quayar. I'm not sure how to pronounce that one either. So I had a list presented to me by an astrologer, and I thought, okay, let me get these implemented. So yeah, that's definitely on there. I do see another question here. Could you sort planets, aspects, houses like an astro theme and compare it to others in the database with the same? Okay. I believe what you're asking about there, this is from Saturnus Maximus, about whether I can sort aspects and search aspects across my charts, if I'm understanding correctly. And that at this point, no, but that is something that I'm definitely considering implementing. I think that has some good value from a research perspective, definitely. So thanks for asking that. Okay, so let's take a look at, actually, Spencer, why don't I address your print question first while we're here. So when you're looking at a chart, I mentioned this toolbar. This icon on the far right is called share and download. And it's quite simple. You just click that and you have a couple of different options. You can email the chart, you can download it for printing, or you can download a graphic of it if you want, say for social media. But if I just do download, I will get a PDF of the chart. There it is. And I can just do print, and here's my chart. In this case, it came with a symbol key. You don't have to download that if you don't want. You can turn that off. And when you download it, it'll just be the chart. And when we get into saved charts, we're looking at a transit chart right now, which is not saved. But when we get into a saved chart, you'll be able to add notes, and you can include those notes in your download as well. So you could actually create a custom report if you wanted to. Let's look at this last data sheet here, which is midpoints. I don't know if you folks use midpoints much, but again, I wanted to make working with them easier. So you can simply click on this icon, this data sheet here, and you get a list of all the midpoints. It's similar to the other ones again. I can look at all the midpoints for the moon just by searching on moon. And I can turn them on as well. You'll notice that I have one turned on here, the sun moon midpoint. You may not have noticed it, but it's sitting right here, right along the kind of outer rim here. And I can click on it and it gives me the sun moon midpoint at 18 Leo. It does calculate aspects as well to the midpoint. So it can be a useful way again, to bring another dimension of data into your analysis. Okay, why don't we look at some save charts, because Luna does support things like bi-wheels and secondary progressions and that sort of thing. So let's take a look at, we'll do Angela Davis's chart here. So here's a natal chart. I'm just gonna, for the sake of simplicity, I'm gonna clean up some of these things. Just remove some of the extra points here. Okay, and you notice the layout here looks a little bit different. For the most part, it's the same. You've got the little info panel here that gives you the chart details, the chart itself, of course, the toolbar. There's a new icon now in the toolbar called Notebook. I'll go into that in a little bit. The biggest change is over here on the right. Instead of that animator box that you saw, now there's an auxiliary charts box where you can access the secondary progress chart, the solar arc directed chart, solar return, and a relocated chart, basically with one click. Very, very easy. And you can save them as well under this chart profile. I was mentioning earlier before we began the presentation that I'm going to be adding tertiary progressions pretty soon. That's pretty much wrapped up and ready to go. Just waiting to be launched and so forth. So that'll be forthcoming, and that'll be another option right here. So if we want to look at the secondary progress chart, her secondary progress chart for right now, we just click that link and there we go. There's a secondary progress chart, which now it's switched over here back to the animator because this is a chart that you would animate. So you could go back several years if you wanted to see when the moon's changing signs. You can certainly relocate it. I believe she's in Berkeley now. I think I spelled that wrong. Lots of options there. And this is a good time now to show the bi-wheel functionality of Luna. So floating around down here on the various screens has been this kind of add bi-wheel box. So because we're looking at a secondary progress chart, it tells you here, again, in this little info panel, what kind of chart you're looking at. I can go back to the natal if I want, which I'll do just so you can see it's easy to flip back and forth. But I'll go back to the secondary progressed. And now let's do a bi-wheel to the natal. And there's my bi-wheel. And as you can see, what it did is it put the natal chart on the inside and then the secondary progress chart on the outside, which is typically the way we would look at that. You can flip that if you want. You can drag these windows and that rearranges the sort order. But now we're able to kind of navigate around here. So I can go, and we'll see the moon. And actually, in a SP chart, it's about the only thing that'll move in a month. Just kind of tick along there. And if I want to go back, if I want to get rid of the bi-wheel, there's a little X, remove bi-wheel, pop that off. And now I'm back to her natal chart, where I can do the same thing with the solar arc directed, the solar return. Look at the current solar return. You'll see that this panel changes because in a solar return context, my navigation would really just be show me the next solar return, show me the previous solar return, or relocate the solar return, that sort of thing. So one of the things that it's probably a good time to mention that one of the kind of design philosophies that I'm implementing with Luna is to be as intuitive as possible. I don't want people to have to hunt through a manual to figure out how to do something. I do have documentation, by the way, that's here under this question mark. There's a knowledge base. We won't go through it, but just so you know, you can look things up if you need to. But the idea really is that when you need to do something, Luna presents you with the options to do it. So because I'm looking at a solar return chart, it's giving me the option to navigate to different solar returns. Again, backwards and forwards for any given year, relocate it and so on. I might want to add it to a biwheel. I can do transits to the solar return. And now I can animate the transit chart on the outside, or cast a completely different solar return altogether and look at the transits to that solar return. Okay, so let me know if I'm moving too fast on any of this. I don't like to, I don't want to get too pedantic, but I don't want to, bore people, but I don't want to move too fast and lose people. So just let me know if there's anything that you're missing or you want me to kind of review again. I'm happy to do that. What I think we'll do now is look at, let's take a look at the note feature. I mentioned before that, let's go back to the natal chart though. So because this is a chart that comes from my profiles or my saved files, I can write notes to it. So click on notebook. And right now, these are just some sample notes. These aren't real. I just have filler text for demo purposes. But there's a couple different ways that you can store notes in here. By default, you have the timeline view, which just shows me chronologically when I added my notes. You'll see that there's some notes on the left and some notes on the right. That's because some I've marked private and some I've marked shareable. And you can see more specifically what those are when you go to one of these tabs. Here's the private tab. Here's the shareable notes. So you can see there's 3 shareable notes. I can reorder them if I want. And you might be wondering, well, why would I want to reorder my notes? And why would I want to make some shareable and some private if I'm the only one using my account? Aren't I the only one who's going to see these notes anyway? Well, yes, unless you share. So remember, we can share charts. Well, I can also share the notes with the chart. So if I do that, I'll let that generate. Just takes a minute. There we go. And now I've got the chart. I included the symbol key again. And now I have all the notes that I've added. But I only have the shareable notes, none of the private notes. So if you're doing consultation work or you want to, write reports for people, this is a great way to do that. If you're just doing your own practice and your own journaling, you can use it for that as well. And you can share the note just with yourself, keep in your own files, or you could just keep them as private and just access them directly in Luna. All right, let's look at some synastry. I think, so we'll look at biwheels a little bit more, and then we can look at composite charts. So when you're, excuse me, when you want to look at a biwheel between 2 people, which is your synastry chart, you open up the natal chart here, and then the add biwheel option is going to give you, we could look at the transits. So here's the transit to the natal, which I think we've seen already. We can close that. And then you could do a chart lookup. So now it's asking me to pick a chart I want to add as a biwheel to Angela Davis. And what we're going to do is just pick this test chart here I have. Okay. Here's my guy, Cosmos Kwasinski, just a little test chart I use. So here's a synastry biwheel, which we're all probably somewhat familiar with at least. Now this changed again. Now we have a composite generator option here. So Luna supports the midpoint method at the moment. So what you can do is, if I want to look at the composite chart, I just click midpoint method. And here's my composite midpoint chart between Angela Davis and Cosmos. And this chart works like the others. I can interact with it just fine. Look at the aspects. And one of the things that I really like that I found other software doesn't do is, if you want to go back to the biwheel, you can just convert back to the biwheel. So you can go back and forth very easily, however you like, between the composite chart and the biwheel. There's also another button here, which we can talk about now that we have a bi-wheel up, which is the interwheel aspects. This is more of a conventional looking aspect grid. It only shows up when you're looking at bi-wheels. So do be aware of that. Because what it does is it shows you the planetaries, the planets that you selected across the top for the inside wheel, and then the ones that you selected for the outside wheel are along the left, and it's just showing you the aspects that they're making. And once again, you'll see declinations are showing right alongside regular aspects. So treating them essentially the same. You get to see if it's an applying or separating aspect, and so on. Let's see, I got a question from Dominique. Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you for that, Dominique. So I mentioned earlier that you can use SolarFire or other software alongside Luna. What I mean by that is that I feel like the price is not prohibitive, that a person has to choose between one or the other. I'm not asking for several $100s of an investment where you have to say, okay, I'm either going to buy SolarFire or I'm going to buy Luna. I can't afford both. That's kind of more what I mean, but but it is possible though, Dominique, to get charts that you have in SolarFire into Luna. So we can do an import. That for sure is supported. So charts from SolarFire and AstroDienst, I do have a way of getting those in. If someone has another program that they want to extract charts from, I think someone asked about AstroSeek, then we have to I will look into that, because I know that we can get them into Luna if we can get them out of the other system. So again, that's kind of the most important thing, is getting the data out of the other system is kind of the hardest part. Getting it into Luna, that part's pretty easy. That part I got done. It's getting it out is the tough part. Okay, so what I'll do is maybe I'll walk through, there's a couple things we could do next. How's everyone doing so far? Is this questions, concerns, everything okay? All right. Why don't I show how to, thank you, Kelly, I appreciate it. I want to show you a little bit about how this works here. This is because this is your chart list. This is where you're going to go to open up your chart files and look at all the data that you saved and so on. You can see here that we've got 44 what I call chart profiles. Now this too is a list that is searchable. So I could search for, I know I got someone here named Cosmos, and there we go. There he is. But you can do a few other things as well. I put the sun sign here, so you can sort by that if you like. So you can see your Aries on top, your Tauruses, and so on. You can even filter by that. So these are all the Aries charts in my database. These are the Pisces charts, and so on. By default, Luna will give you 3 different chart types to choose from when you create a chart. So we'll create a chart right now. I'll just use mine since it was asked for. And then, so when you create a chart, actually, let me go back first before I do that, because I think I did that pretty quickly. I want to point out this button here, which shows up on every screen of the website. So whether you're on the transit page, whether you're looking at your settings, you're going to see this little button here and maybe not know what it is. It's just a real quick and easy way for you to get into the create a chart screen. And one of the reasons I did that is because, again, because Luna runs on your phone, my thinking was you're out and about, you meet someone, maybe you talk astrology. Hey, Lem, I want to put your chart into my software. That'd be cool. Well, you don't have to fiddle around with where do I go, hit this menu, hit that menu, do new chart and all that stuff. There's just a button here. You just open Luna, hit the new chart button, and you're taken right to the screen. You can just enter the details right away. So I'll do that. So obviously your name, whatever name, however you want to name the chart. Now you can choose the type. I mentioned Luna has 3 types that are sort of built in: natal, event, and horary. But you can further refine that, which I'll show you next, with tags. So in this case, this will be a natal chart. And this doesn't really do anything other than just help you stay organized. So there's nothing, you know, if I were to assign an event to this, it's not going to do anything different to the chart itself. The casting of the chart operates exactly the same way. So tagging is the way I organize charts. So I don't know how familiar everyone is with tags. It's something that I feel like showed up a lot with the advent of like e-commerce and blogging websites and that sort of thing. But the idea is that instead of being rigid and saying you have to put your chart in this file, in this folder, and so on, you can create any number of tags that you want and assign those tags to a chart, or not. You don't have to tag at all if you don't want to. But if you're, let's say you're a teacher and you've got classes spread out throughout the week, you might do something like, you know, Tuesday class. Oops, I hit the wrong button there. Tuesday class, and there you go. Now I'm creating a tag, and I can take all of my students who are in my Tuesday class and put that tag on there. And I'll show you in a minute how easy that'll be to find them. You know, in this case, personal, you know, that sort of thing. So you can play with this and organize this however you like. That'll show up. That's what you see over here, these custom tags. That's what we're creating. So I'll go back to finishing the setup here. So I'll just enter the date. Easy enough. The time, we know how that works. And again, we're back to the Google Maps situation. If you put any searchable location in here, I could put the name of the hospital I was born in if I wanted, what have you. In this case, I'll just do that, and there's the chart. Takes you right back into it, and we're familiar with this. You've got secondary progress, solar arc, all that stuff's ready to go. I have a notebook option again. There's no notes yet because it's a brand new chart, so that's expected. And you're off and running. One of the things I didn't show before that I think is useful is we could look at the secondary progress chart. And let's say we like this chart for whatever reason, okay? Well, you can save it. So I'll save it. And now you see there's a little trash can here because I could delete it if I want. But now you're going to say, well, where is it? How do I find it? Well, if I'm back here, let me just open up the chart again. I didn't need to go this direction, but I did. So let me just go back. So I click on personal, that pulls up the one chart that's tagged with that. Under the secondary progressed section here, I have a save charts button now. And this is the chart I just saved. And if I want to animate that chart, I can. Oops. By year, let's do by year so we can see some movement and say, okay, this is good. You know, here, do that one. Let's save that chart. I can go back to the natal chart. And now I've got 2 charts under my secondary progress. So the idea is that you can build a profile, if you will, around a particular event or person. Instead of all the charts as being these independent things, they're kind of grouped together, essentially. So I wanted to show you that one as well. So back on the main charts list, I think I kind of expressed that already. You could click on any of these tags, and that's going to filter your charts for you. Also, the things that are not clickable are also searchable. So for instance, if I can just do April, here's all my April birthdays, or I could do Manhattan, you know. So this will give you just different ways of searching. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at this cycle section here. I'm just reading some of the comments here. Yeah, Katerina, yeah, there's all kinds of creative ways like that. You're right, that you could organize charts graphs of transit cycles. So yeah, that is something that I do think will be forthcoming. I don't have graphs on that yet, although you can actually, there is a way to do it with the ephemeris. I don't know the name of that software that he uses actually. No, I thought he used SolarFire actually, but I could be wrong. I'm not quite sure. You can do that in Luna with an ephemeris. Why don't we skip the cycles right now and go here? So if you remember, the books, I'm sure some of you folks remember the old ephemeris books, which you may still have and are very useful. Well, in Luna, though, you don't necessarily need to use the book anymore. You can just generate your own ephemeris, however you like. We use the default settings here and just click it just so you can see what it looks like first. And here we go. This is a daily ephemeris for midnight, the midnight ephemeris as it's often called, for the planets that I've selected. Now, the other things that I could do is localize the ephemeris. So if I wanted to know when these things are happening in my location, I could do this. So Katerina's, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's basically the ephemeris would be the best way to do that right now in Luna. She's asking about searching for, let's say, over the past century, aspects between Saturn and Uranus. Let's look for all the conjunctions. So the way you would have to do that here in Luna, there's not a specific aspect calculator at the moment that is in development, but for the moment, the way you would do it, we could just go, let's say 01, 1900 to, let's just say, we could stay with today. And if we just want to do Saturn and Uranus, is that what we said? Yes. Okay. Turn all these other guys off. Let's not worry about declination. We'll just do that. And we might not need to do 1 day. Let's do a 1 week interval. Archetypal Explorer. Yes. Okay. I'm familiar with that one. So that's the software you're referring to. Okay. All right. So this was a little bit lengthy. Let me just bring that back a little bit, see if that does yeah, that should give me. Right. So I am looking though, so to answer questions that I've been going back and forth with in the chat window here. This is an ephemeris that's kind of text-based, but I am looking to implement a graphic ephemeris, which is essentially what Archetypal Explorer is. It's a graphic ephemeris, and it shows you visually the curves of where various planetary alignments are happening. So that's definitely something I'm very interested in implementing. But in the meantime, you can still do it sort of manually by just generating an ephemeris to include whatever planets and points you want, and looking at, where are these particular aspects occurring, where are the conjunctions occurring, and so forth. And I'm not going to necessarily go into all that at the moment, but you can kind of get an idea of how it works. One of the nice things here is that you could download this data. This will download into a spreadsheet. So you can then open it in a program like Excel or Google Sheets if you wanted. And I've got a video on how to use the ephemeris in a little bit more detail that I think kind of explains some kind of tricks you might want to use for it. And I show a chart that I've created with it. So it might be worth taking a look at, when you have a free moment and seeing how it works. In the meantime, I do have let's take a look at the cycles section here. So right now, Luna supports the solar ingress periods and the lunation cycles. So let's look for we'll do the lunar cycle first. So this is now going to give us 8 charts for the current lunation cycle. So you see here, and this is specific to my location, but you customize the location for you. So Luna will use your specific home location, of course. So we've got here the sun moon. This was the new moon we just had today, 16 Leo, but I can navigate through the other charts. So I can look at, here's the crescent phase. We've got a first quarter square here at 23 Leo, Scorpio, and so on. And now these charts can be saved. You could do a bi-wheel here as well, if you'd like, and see how things are interacting. So, and then of course the solar ingress works similarly. Here's the current solar ingresses for the year. Sun was at 0 Aries on March 20th, and so on. Look at the solstice. So this cycle section is, I'm very influenced by the work of Dane Rudhyar, and so this is the beginning of trying to implement some of his philosophical thinking in terms of looking at astrology through the lens of cycles, to look at things in a holistic sense. So I absolutely intend on this section getting a lot bigger over the months and years, no doubt about that, as I bring in things like the Mercury cycle. Oftentimes we focus so much on Mercury retrograde, but in my mind, we lose sight of the fact that, you know, the Sun-Mercury relationship is always occurring, and it's about a 3 to 4 month process. And if you look at least in my experience, if you look at, from inferior conjunction to inferior conjunction, you can really see things develop in terms of, let's say, new mental patterns, new mental paradigms, and one's openness to new ideas or closedness to new ideas, as the case may be. And so I do find the cycle approach to be really useful in understanding one's process, kind of unfolding through time, so to speak. So we looked at some of the settings here. I mentioned tags before. You can manage your tags here, so you can see all the ones that you have. But that's kind of that's sort of the bird's eye view here of the presentation. Are there any questions at the moment that haven't been asked yet that I can assist with? Okay, exporting data. So yes, I can export your Luna data for you. That's not something built into the software yet, but it takes me a minute or two. If a customer emails me and says, "Hey, can I get a copy of my data?" I can export it for you, no problem. And again, that will be forthcoming, no doubt, where you'll be able to export it yourself as well. Other things that will be coming, I think I mentioned tertiary progressions. That's actually finished, but I'm waiting on some timing on that in terms of a good time to launch. We talked about some advanced data import-export features. I did mention some journaling features, I think, to Jim earlier. I don't know if I mentioned this to you folks or not, but the ability, I shared with you the notebook option that exists, where you can, write private shareable notes and that sort of thing. But as an advanced note-taking feature, it's under active development, working on the ability to add notes to things like specific chart points, making certain aspects. So if you want to write about sun square moon, you could write about sun square moon, and then anytime a chart had sun square moon, you would see those notes. Or Venus, in this case, Venus is in Virgo, you could write about Venus in Virgo, and then anytime Venus was in Virgo in a chart, you'd be able to pull up those notes. And this is going to lead to some reporting features and things like that. So I have no loss of ideas in what to do here. I simply have limited time, so I'm working as hard as I can. But like as I was saying to you all before, this is a labor of love for me, and I feel like this is a life path for me to be on. So I'm very excited about it. And yeah, I'm happy to serve all of you as much as possible. Thanks to everyone writing some great compliments. I really appreciate all that. Like an almanac. What do you mean by the almanac exactly? Is that so someone's asking about an almanac. I know that there's that honeycomb almanac. Is that maybe what you're referring to? Okay. Yeah. So out of anyone, I do have a copy of it somewhere. Yeah. So kind of like a personal transit report. And I think that's something that I could definitely get. Once I get some of those other calculations finished, it won't be a problem to create a personal almanac like that for sure. So, all right. So just as a reminder, go ahead and you can visit the website. You can look for Luna Astrology on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Jim will send out the link if he hasn't yet already, or you can scan it just for a few days here, just giving you guys till Wednesday to sign up if you like, save 20% on first year. And yeah, I hope you love using it. Hope you enjoy using it as much as I love creating it. Jim, I will hand it back to you if there's no further questions.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. I have a question for you, though, Kevin.
Okay.
So since we can import charts from like SolarFire or something, but as we start to create charts and add charts to Luna, is there a limit to how many charts?
That's a good question. No, there is no limit. There's no
Okay.
limit. Yeah.
So,
right.
Okay. So the 80,000 charts that are sitting in SolarFire, I can import in there and it'll be just fine.
That's fine. It's totally fine.
Now, is there a feature in there that allows for the identification and elimination of duplicates?
When I import, yes, I can. I do have an overwrite duplicate feature on my import tool. Right now, the import tool is for me kind of as an administrator. It's not exposed to the user side yet. So when I import, I can do overwrite duplicates. But
All right, so we would,
because it based mostly on name, I have to look at that, see if it uses birth data or name. I think it just uses name.
So at this point, if I wanted to import charts, I'd go through you to get it done.
Correct.
Okay.
And I put that's actually in the documentation that I showed briefly. I've got a note about that. I sometimes include that in my email. I should have mentioned that if you go to the website or if you sign up, you can subscribe to the email newsletter. And so all feature announcements are handled that way right now. And that's where you can get more information on the chart import option and that sort of thing. So you definitely want to make sure if you want to stay in touch, you subscribe to that. Yes, someone just asked that question. The price, I'm not sure where the price will go from here at this point. I can say that so far I've been mapping the price changes to the Venus cycle, the Sun Venus cycle. I've found has intuitively felt like good times to change the price. I started off much higher than I am now and realized that from a business standpoint, I needed to, come down on price to as a startup. So I dropped it quite a bit actually in 2020. And then just this year, I did raise it a little bit marginally. But I will say that the price increase that occurred this year, it went from $3 a month to $5 a month, in case anyone is interested. I honored legacy pricing for everyone. I gave about a 30-day notice on the price increase and said that if you sign up by, I think it was March 31st at that time, if you sign up by then, you're going to lock in legacy pricing forever. So a lot of folks are paying $3 a month and they will pay $3 a month forever, regardless of what the price increases to, as long as they maintain an active account and, insert legal disclaimers and so forth. But so I have a feeling I'll probably do something like that again. There's a chance that I will probably do another level of legacy pricing should the price increase. Or it may be the case that as more advanced features come out, I have more of an a la carte situation. So I could see that maybe some folks might not be interested in Hellenistic tools. And so there may not be a reason to charge for that, but they might be interested in something that a traditional astrologer wouldn't be interested in, let's say. And so I definitely want to keep it fair as much as possible. I'm well aware that astrologers, generally speaking, we're not wealthy people for the most part, and so the cost of living in and of itself is so high these days, especially in places like California and even now in Portland for me, that, and I feel like we're getting nickel and dimed on software all over the place between our Netflix subscriptions and everything else. So I definitely want to keep this, as reasonable as possible for folks. So that's definitely one of my goals. All right, Jim, I did make you the host again in case you need to do any other screen sharing or announcements.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. And thank you very much. So everybody, you've got Kevin's website, his email. You can contact him through the website.
Yes.
If you didn't get, I did send out the link for the coupon right before the meetup started. So if you didn't get it, just let me know and I will send it to you personally. Jimmy_Eddie@hotmail.com. Hey, we're ahead of time here. How about that? Anybody got any other questions about anything? Any announcements? Be quiet bunch. So let's see. Anybody got any thoughts about something, topics for next year? Well, you can unmute yourself so we can hear you if you're talking.
What
Yeah.
are the topics for the rest of the year?
Okay, so September, we're talking about Chiron more than the wounded healer. So, if you're familiar with Chiron and you're used to all the talk about the wounded healer and that's, I've been reading about him and quite frankly, I find that way limiting because he was so much more than that. And the wounded healing, that whole aspect of him came very late in his mythology. So it wasn't like he suffered for most of his mythological existence. It was more about things that happened to him in the beginning. Consider where he came from. He was the son of a god, Saturn, and a female nymph type creature. That he's considered a centaur because he looks like other centaurs, but he's not a true centaur. The true centaurs were a different species unto themselves. Chiron is unique because of the way he was created. The story goes that Saturn's wife caught him having sex with this other wood nymph or whatever she was, and he pulled out in the midst of ejaculation and conception, and so that's turned himself into a horse and took off. And so that's why Chiron came out half man, half horse. Interesting story. I mean, I suppose it could work. But so you have someone who is abandoned by their father, rejected by his mother because, I'm sorry, he's ugly. His mama was not a horse. So, she looks at him and, he's ugly. And so even though after giving birth to him, she rejects him. So you've got this aspect of the rejection. But then he's basically adopted and reared by Apollo. And Apollo is the one who teaches Chiron all of these things. He teaches about medicine and everything. So Chiron starts life as a student, not as a teacher. And so depending upon where you see Chiron, maybe it's more about being maybe it's more about the student teacher aspect than the wounds and healing aspect. Or maybe it has to do with issues of abandonment or rejection. And so there's a lot more to Chiron's life. And then in the end, he sacrifices himself to save Prometheus. So then there's the aspect of sacrifice. So perhaps where Chiron is in your chart represents some area where you've been sacrificing yourself for others. May or may not be a good thing. So there's a whole lot more to talk about Chiron than just the wounded healer.
Yeah, I think
October, we're going to be
Christopher Renstrom just did a talk on him, and it's up on his Instagram page. I can try to share a link.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. Yeah, I know there's been several talks on Chiron recently. So,
And he included
but
some
they all,
interesting art history images about it as well.
yeah, they all start out with the basic theme of the wounded healer, and I think the approach we're going to take is that's, yeah, you know, it's a minor thing. It's something. It's kind of like an add-on. It's yes, it's that, but there's so much more to him than that. It's kind of like looking at a natal chart with just the sun and the moon in it. Yeah, you're only looking at that one. There's one or two factors in there. Father and the mother, for example. October, we're talking about chart patterns. And thank you to Cornelia for providing a lot of feedback on some of those. Things like bowls and buckets and seesaws and tripods and bundles, and it's looking at 10 planets in a chart and finding the picture there. Are they scattered all over the place like a splash? Or are they a locomotive where you have everything, everything's in kind of like a train? In which case, excuse me, how do you identify the engine and how do you identify the caboose, and what difference does that make? So there's a whole lot of different ways of looking at it. It's different than looking at aspect patterns. Aspect patterns is like grand trine, where you may have just 3 planets involved. In a chart pattern, you're looking at all of them. November, still on the tentative schedule, but I'm going to make a pitch for prenatal astrology. And I'm going to take you back to your grandmother, because that's where it starts.
Mhm.
And it's probably going to be more, it's going to start with the biology of the human and how how we develop. Because once you need to understand that process, and then if you understand that timeline process and you consider then what astrology represents and what is it we're trying to get out of astrology, it's like, okay, this is the position of everything in the sky at the moment I was born. And then we look at transits and progressions to see how things change and how they might affect me. Well, the question then is, what about what happened before? How might that have affected me?
Well, that's a great
For the
idea.
9 months I was in my mother's womb,
Mhm.
for the time that my mother life before me, before the conception, the point of conception or time of conception can be very critical, because what was the mother's state at the time,
Mhm.
or the circumstances? And while conception can be difficult to determine, there are techniques for determining it. In some cases, your mother might have a pretty good idea when it happened or how it happened. It's when I start going down this path, I encourage people that if your mother's still alive or your father's alive, particularly if your mother's still alive, talk to them get as much information from them as you can about your conception, her pregnancy with you, but also her childhood and
Mhm.
her mother, and if she knows anything about her mother's pregnancy with her, i.e. your grandmother's pregnancy with your mother. Because you see, the female fetus develops the ovary and all of her eggs by the end of the first trimester. So guess what? You're there. You are in your mother's ovary while she is in your grandma's womb. So
Mm,
whatever is happening to your grandmother is happening to your mother is happening to you. And that whole experience builds then for that whole period of time.
Yeah, these were some of the first charts I started doing, actually, figuring out when was my mother in gestation, and what was that like when she was 4 months of gestation, when the eggs in the ovum is created.
Mhm.
And then another series of interesting charts and discoveries that I found just looking up death records under Social Security, that during my own gestation, both my paternal grandparents died. And that was a big, oh, aha.
Yeah.
Oh,
There
that
you go.
explains
Mhm.
so much.
Yeah. Yeah, because you can find out a lot of this, even if your parents are dead and you don't have anybody else like aunts, uncles, or somebody that you can talk to about this. If you can just getting information about when somebody was born or when somebody died, and looking at what was going on, or look at the history of the time during that period of time. Was it a wartime? What were the circumstances? Was this a relationship that ended badly? Was this like a one night oops? There's all kinds of factors that are going to play into what is the psychological mental state of the mother slash grandmother during this time period,
Hmm.
because that all translates into then that egg and event ultimately to you or to us.
Mhm.
I'm one of us. So that's kind of like where November is tentatively going. Because once we get to that point, then exploring it into greater depth would, go into the next phase of prenatal astrology, and perhaps more time looking at um, things that you can look at for your own chart during that 9 month or less period, depending upon if you're a premature period that you were in the womb. December, we're going to be doing our look ahead to 2022. Focus on the 3 USA Pluto returns.
Hey, Rita, you and I were interested in medical astrology, or looking at the human body and figuring out charts from the physiology, which is something I've done tinkered with for a long time.
Mhm.
Maybe you and I could partner up and do I don't know, a little student presentation if you'd like.
oh,
Yeah, we can.
that would be-
You two work on that, because that we can add into our early 22 categories. We we have in the past had guest speaker talk about some medical astrology, but I think what you're getting into could be a little more specific, and probably it would certainly be more interesting, be very interesting, I think, to people.
the medical astrology would dovetail into the prenatal astrology. It's
Yes.
both
Yeah.
part of the same thing. And I'm thinking, Carl Jung said many years ago, he said, when you're ever studying a client, you always go back to the family of origin. I mean, that's just part of being a psychologist.
Mhm.
But he said to go back at least three generations. Well, if you're ever watching Finding Your Roots and you look at the DNA of people, you can see these patterns for generations coming up. So it's really fascinating. So this whole thing of prenatal and the medical would be a nice combination. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm. And what's the other one? The seventh son of the seventh son, or something like that.
Hmm.
Sins of the father, things of those.
Oh, yeah.
There's a
the
whole
father-
lot of
Yeah.
expressions that all play into this.
Yeah, and
Okay,
Brian,
anybody?
The other interesting thing I was watching, I love Ken Burns. I was watching the Roosevelts, I've seen it like 3 times,
Mhm.
but it was just so fascinating to me how Eleanor never wanted to do what she ended up doing, all these great things. She was constantly protesting. And so it'd be interesting at some point to look at her chart, or other people that have kind of, even though they don't know consciously what they're supposed to be doing, it probably is in her chart somewhere that she was supposed to be doing all these things.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, I
And
think,
that's again the predestination or the natal chart or whatever.
yeah, sometimes we end up fighting against, trying to not do what we're supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
And what the old
Okay.
the expression is that if you do something you love, if you find a job doing something you love or enjoy doing, then you really don't go to work anymore. It's not work. Work is a four-letter word that implies things like drudgery. Oh, crap, I don't enjoy this, but I got to do it to make the money. So if you find your passion, if you follow your bliss, as Joseph Campbell would say, life is happier.
Right. I'd like to say something here, Jim. When I was studying with Joan McCovers, we looked into the esoteric charts, and she told me that I should be working with children. I said, that's nonsense. I don't want to be working with children. I want to be a writer. I wanted to be a singer when I was a kid. That's all I cared about was being in choirs and singing. But look what happened. I mean, here we have come all this way. I ended up getting a master's degree in child development. I ended up working with children. I ended up doing astrology at the same time and then combining them. And now I've got my book out, and it's it all started with really my Uranus return. So it doesn't matter how long it takes, the later you get to it.
Yeah, and you still got the right.
So I'm still working on that.
We're all working on it. And as long as we find things that we enjoy doing and we can do them, I think that helps to keep us younger, it helps healthier, and makes life a whole lot more enjoyable, especially, around other people that share those interests.
Like Dominique and me.
Yeah, you do. Dynamic duo. Okay, anybody got anything else? Spencer, how about you? Unmute. Unmute, Spencer.
I've given some thought about palmistry and astrology. I'm not quite ready to jump on it totally, but I am reviewing Chiron, Cairo and other people like that who are involved in it. And there's going to be a huge conference on it. And it's going to be in October. So I think I'm going to go to this conference, and from the conference, I'll try and do something next year about palmistry and astrology and maybe even fate, because there's a lot of people who think palmistry has a lot to do with your fate. And I would argue I hope convincingly, that it really does tell you a lot about your personality and your character. And so that's what I'm kind of up to in the research department right now, except I'd also like to recommend Richard Nolly's book on Chiron, which I've been reading, and I've read other books too, but he does quite an interesting discussion of the when I don't remember the A and P, but when Chiron is the farthest away from the sun and when it's closer in its relationship to Uranus and Saturn, which he does quite a bit of work on. So if you're interested in that aspect, I'd really recommend him. There are others I won't go into right now, but that's basically what I'm up to.
Hey, regarding palmistry, Frank Clifford just posted that on Saturday, the 23rd and Sunday, the 24th of October, there's going to be a low-priced palmistry conference with 11 well-known, internationally known palmistry through a London School of Astrology.
Yes, that's the one I'm talking about. I'm going to definitely take that. So I'm definitely going to take that. Maybe we can, Katrina, do you do a lot of palmistry?
I don't, but I do a lot of precognitive astrology.
Okay. We ought to talk sometime about this if you'd like, sometime when we have a moment or two and we could discuss that. So anyway, that's all I have to say right now, Jim.
Okay, thanks, Spencer.
Jim, can I ask a practical question? Do you send out? I know. Well, you have to pay attention to your baby sister here. Do you send out an email every month? Because I'm not getting it with the Zoom connection.
I'm not either.
I send it out through Meetup every week, the look ahead,
And
And
Meetup, I don't
then,
have Meetup then. But didn't you used to send an email and it had,
no, I just do
No?
it through
Oh.
the only thing that I send out regularly. I don't have a separate email listing.
Oh,
So everything that what I do, I send out through Meetup. Now the look ahead that I do is also posted on Jim Scher's website.
and I found it
Um,
on Facebook, on the Santa Monica meetup. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
I'm
what-
trying to do it, try to remember to do it on the Facebook page.
Oh, I forgot to promo. I'm still taking members or participants to a free group that I got through an ESAR grant startup, Iranian Times think tank too.
Yes, I haven't been able to join you yet.
It's a
Timing is,
think tank salon about how do we use astrology, not just to look at charts and events, but how do we use astrology for good, or especially in relation to the square Saturn-Uranus squares, ecology, climate action,
Yeah.
social justice, and improvement.
it's kind of about, yeah, how do we live it?
And the solutions and
Mhm.
intergenerational conversations.
Yeah, okay. Well, now Chiron is big. I think Chiron is very important when you start dealing with intergenerational, because he orbits between his father and his grandfather, Saturn and Uranus.
Well, what we're really looking at is too also like the Pluto generations and how do we collaborate more beautifully together so the next generations, when we get to, Pluto and Aquarius, Pluto and Pisces, what kind of planet do we give the next?
Yeah, what are we going to leave? What do we leave them, other than
Yeah.
a mess?
Let me add one more thing about palmistry. I forgot about this, but it's a great article. It's about, let me hold it up here. It's called Chiron. It's Cairo, which is a Chiro, who's a very famous palmist who's in LA, and and it's a wonderful article on palmistry and astrology that I should have brought up. And if you get the most recent, it's got this cover. You'll find that incredible article, which is very well done by Kim Farnell. So that's a little other thing to talk about when we talk about, because you have to talk about him. He made it so important during the 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
It's in the Mountain Astrologer, Spencer.
Yes.
Thank you, Dominique.
It's called, and of course, he made his name out of the word chirology, Chiro, which means the hand. So he gave himself the name Chiro, which means the hand. But it also, like, chirology is the study of the hand. Chiropractic is the way of looking with the body with the hands. It's a very interesting article. Take a look at it.
Enter. I found something some years back at a swap meet that I want to give you someday or show you, but it is a hand. And it has all of these things about palmistry on it that I don't understand.
Well, I have one of those. I have one of those.
You do? This
I
is,
do.
it was fascinating and I had to buy it, but I don't understand it.
Well,
Oh, yeah, it's like the mound of
Now you
Venus,
have to
all
get
the
a book
planets.
on it.
Get Cairo's book, and that'll be the first step, because he's really the guy who kicked it off, very popular in the 20s and 30s.
Cool. I thought that was cool. I thought of you when I found it.
Yeah, thank you.
Actually, Ellen Goldberg is a palmistry, full-time palmistry and astrologer. She's got a nice page on Facebook and she teaches palmistry. I found her through Ann Ortley. Ellen Goldberg. She's in
Ellen
New York.
Goldberg.
Yeah, she's a lovely, loving human. I
All
think
right.
she's been doing it for 40 years.
Great.
Workshops and
Great.
lots of info
Well, you can
online.
also get my book, The Astrology of Love, on Amazon. But I recommend, don't get any of my other books, which are not the latest edition. The latest edition has how to use the pendulum, which, if you're into other aspects of it, like what is it? What are they? Anyway, there's a lot of other esoteric people that use the pendulum, and I kind of go over that in that book. So don't get anyone except the Astrology of Love, which is, I finally got rewrites back from India, and so I did my own edition, which I added it's called the New Psychic Edition, because you have to do something kind of showboaty to get something to sell. But anyway, that's
You know,
Well,
that's a
that
way
would
of reading the body through the hand. But what I was talking about, Rita, was actually reading the chart through the body, which Brian Gray talks about. He's taught forever at Steiner College, and talked about how Carl Jung really read a person's chart through even how they entered the room, their physiology, their voice and tempo. And that's been really one of the primary ways I started understanding astrology, was just through people's bodies.
Mhm.
You know, their temperature, their eyes,
That's
their
right. Mhm.
We have a whole lot more to look forward to. Kevin, once again, thank you very much.
Oh, yes,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Okay.
Yes,
all
thank
very
you,
much.
Kevin.
And thank
Yeah,
Kevin. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you all.
Kevin.
This was great.
thank you, everybody. If you have other thoughts, other questions, other whatevers, you got Spencer's email, you got my email, pop us an email. Thanks for your continued support. Stay well, keep cool, stay healthy, and we will see you in let's
See you
see,
in
September 12th, when we'll be talking about Chiron.
Yay.
Till then, peace out, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Peace.
Bye for now.
Bye.